Well, we've progressed up to the summit of Moel Golfa, 403 metres on the Ordnance Survey map. And I'm back with Rob Woodall. Hi, Rob.
Howdy, Myrddyn.
And this is our second segment of many that we propose to do today. And in the first clip, Rob, we covered your sort of first memories of the British Hills and progress to the Munros and English and Welsh 2,000 footers. But you're probably Britain's leading peak bagger, if you don't mind me saying.
Well, there are certain lies lists I haven't done that other people have, I have to say at that point. But
Well, I'll take that on board. But now you've completed many of the major listings of British Hills, haven't you? Mm-hmm. And I believe this is coming through from about 1990 through to 2005?
Yeah.
And what sort of listings have you completed?
Yeah, well, the Munros were 1990, and I suppose Donald's came next then, maybe 92. The main kind of project, Donald's were a kind of long weekend thing, you know, living down south. I could get up there, but not really any further, being relatively impoverished at the time, as one tends to be in one's 20s. And so I was working on the Corbetts, kind of, you know, when I had longer kind of periods of leave, and that's like the Munros was a kind of 5-year thing, and I eventually got through them. 95, I think I remember finishing with friends on Rum, H-Val probably, and I kind of was wondering a little bit where to go from there. I was a little bit, perhaps getting a little bit fed up of just plodding up hills for getting to the top. And I suppose kind of what happened, I was reading a book by Hamish Brown, his account of his continuous kind of trip around all the Munros, and the thing that struck me about that, apart from his obviously sheer will and persistence, was he was really into kind of, well, he's got all sorts of interests, particularly kind of birds and plants. So I thought, well, maybe I could start, you know, looking for birds and plants a little bit. So, you know, I got a little book, you know, I Spy Book of British Wildlife type of thing, and that, you know, provided a bit more interest. And of course, I then had 2 other lists to tick, which was a bit of a problem. So started bird watching and plant watching, but it got, you know, it revived the interest a bit.
So the implication there, Rob, that after completing the Corbetts, did you sort of think about, you know, that would be it as far as hill bagging or hill walking was concerned?
Yeah,
or?
Kind of. It was starting to get a bit of a chore, really. Plus, that wasn't really quite clear what to do afterwards, you know.
Are you glad you carried on?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Well, of course, after Donald's, Corbetts, you've now completed the Munros, and I should imagine the Munro Tops came pretty soon afterwards. And
they were, yeah, most of the Munro Tops were done kind of with the Munros, as I was saying before, you know, following the gospel according to Irving Butterfield. You know, you tend to do the tops as well because he's very much, you know, doing the whole thing. There were 1 or 2 kind of tricky ones, like I think a couple of the Coolin ones that, you know, had to go back for, and the northern pinnacles on Leah had to do a decent day. So yeah, it was just kind of tidying up really.
Now again, if we're now progressing into the mid to late 90s, I believe the Wainwrights and the Wainwright Outlying Fells soon came, and also again more into England and Wales with the Deweys and Clem Yeamans.
Yeah, well, I suppose that I'm a great one for kind of ignoring hill lists really, because I think they're too kind of big. And there were a couple of things that were kind of kicking around actually. There was the Graham's list, which came out in the Great Outdoors magazine, and a friend sent me a photocopy, which I filed and ignored for quite a long while. Although I did get around to marking them up on the map just in case, as you do. And again, somebody mentioned the Marilyns, and I ignored it because this is just a stupidly big list. And then I think somebody sent me a database with them in, so I kind of started ticking those up. I can't remember where the Deweys came from, but yeah, I think they were in the same database actually as the Marilyns. Yeah.
And of course you mentioned the database, and you've also mentioned the Marilyns, and of course over recent years there's been a very big database started via the RHB users group.
Yeah.
And there's various files there for a multitude of hill lists, isn't there?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and a lot that I think you've inputted many and worked out the drop for many, as well as sort of coordinating various people to look at the details and then put them up onto the database.
Well, a lot of the kind of base data was from others, including your good self, some of the Welsh ones, of course, and the English ones. But you mentioned Clem Yeamans before. The Clem, of course, in that list was Clem Clements, who we both know and have corresponded with, and he's produced a lot of hugely detailed, hill data with drops and heights, and yeah, I've just typed them up really and checked a few things and quibbled with a few things, and yeah, just got them online.
Well, one of the plans to do various clips with Rob today was we got various sort of proposals and talking about individual things that Rob's done in amongst the hills, and the one planned for this segment was to talk about hill bagging, but to concentrate on 3 of the lists that Rob was first to finish. And I'm thinking, as this is now progressing, Rob, possibly do a second one just concentrating on those 3. And if just with this one, if we now carry on progressing through the lists that you've completed, and of course we've mentioned the Wainwrights and Wainwright Outlying Fells, obviously based in the lakes.
Yeah, yeah.
We've covered the Clem Yeamans, and they're the English and Welsh ones.
Yeah.
Now you also mentioned the Grahams, and again that's another list that Alan Dawson put together, didn't he?
Well, Fiona Graham started it off, and
yeah.
She had a slightly different basis, and there were a few errors there which Alan kind of picked up, really, yeah.
Now, you yourself have also compiled a number of hill lists, haven't you, which have taken you into Ireland, I believe? Was it Ireland's 50 Finest?
Oh, the 50 Finest, yeah. This is a prominence-based thing. We'll perhaps come back onto prominence at some stage in terms of how it's defined, but yeah, in terms of how much hills rise above their kind of connecting col, how separate they are in terms of height, and if you just rank hills in terms of prominence, then you get the 50 Finest. This is a kind of American idea, really, and yeah, so we did it for Scotland, England and Wales, but particularly for Ireland you get quite an interesting list.
And of course, when you were over in Ireland doing those, you also completed the Irish Hewitts, the 2,000 footers?
Yeah, the Hewitts is the kind of main thing, but yeah, I did the 50 Finest, the county summits as well, and this other list, the John Kirk Thousanders, which is quite an interesting idea. Trying to remember it's basically the 1,000 comes from if you add the elevation and the prominence with a minimum prominence, I think, of 20 metres, then the sum of those has got to be at least 1,000. So you end up with some, apart from very big hills and very prominent hills, you get some kind of interesting ones in between.
Yeah.
Things kind of nice islands and things. So I did those as well.
Well, that's almost sort of brought us up to date with the hill list that you've completed. Now, sort of talking about the ones that that you've mentioned, the 3 that I'd like to do the next segment on, one of them is in the public domain, which is Michael Dewey's list. Mm-hmm. Now, the other 2 really aren't, because they've never properly been published, and that is the Clem Yeamans, although of course they're published within the RHB database,
yeah.
and also John Kirk's Thousanders. And I think for the next segment, Rob, possibly just concentrate on those 3, because they're all of merit, they're all different, and they take you to vast areas of Britain. Mm-hmm. So this is the nearing the end of Rob's second clip, again the second of many, and we've covered Rob's sort of hill bagging as of to the present day on the list that you have completed, and we may find another little panorama to view from the top of Mulgolver. You've got the Gypsy Memorial as you look at this this screen just over Rob's left shoulder, his actual right shoulder. I think for Rob, for now, Rob, cheers for that. And if you fancy doing another one, we'll find another little area and just concentrate on those 3 lists.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Cheers, Rob.